Generations of middle-class Indian families have treated an acceptance letter from a Western university as a golden ticket. You board a flight in Mumbai or Delhi, study for 2 years, and step onto an escalator that smoothly carries you straight into the global upper middle class. Over 1.3 million Indian students still pack their bags for that exact journey every single year. But the mechanics of that escalator have broken down. The strategies that guaranteed a green card or permanent residency back in 2018 simply do not work anymore. The first point of failure is the math. With the rupee weakening to 85 to 90 against the US dollar and global housing costs surging, the true price of a master's degree has quietly crossed the 70 lakh rupee threshold. This chart maps the rising total cost of overseas education against the declining probability of actually securing a work visa or permanent residency in the US, Canada, and Australia. At the exact same time, the financial barrier has skyrocketed. The regulatory door is slamming shut. You are now paying a premium price for a lottery ticket. The guarantee is gone. You are taking on massive, compounding financial risk for a statistical coin toss. The conversation around studying abroad has completely shifted. You can no longer just ask which country has the best weather or the easiest coursework. You have to ask if your specific academic and financial profile can survive a gauntlet of new regulatory walls. The top destination countries are actively rewriting their immigration codes to throttle the sheer volume of incoming students. Canada has implemented a strict cap of 360,000 student visas, representing a massive 35% drop from previous years. Their permanent residency pathways have also severely tightened, heavily favoring applicants with specific skilled trades or French language proficiency. In the United States, securing the right to work long-term has become mathematically improbable. The odds of winning the H1B visa lottery have plummeted to less than 20. Meanwhile, the UK has raised the salary threshold for a 5-year indefinite leave to remain to over £38,000, while simultaneously banning dependents for most student visas. These are not isolated temporary hurdles. They form a deliberate systemic filter engineered to lock out the average applicant and reserve entry exclusively for the most highly funded or exceptionally skilled migrants. To understand how dangerous that filter is, you have to look past the advertised tuition fees and calculate the true localized cost of surviving in a Tier 1 Western city today. The average Indian student is now financing a total expense of 60 to 80 lakh rupees. Because most families do not have that sitting in a bank account, it requires an education loan saddled with an 11 to 14% interest rate. This animated chart visualizes the reality of that debt. That heavy red block represents the interest, which instantly converts your initial loan into a mandatory EMI of 15 to 20 lakh rupees every single year, starting the moment you graduate. An EMI, or equated monthly installment, is a fixed payment amount made by a borrower to a lender every month to clear a debt. There is a persistent myth that you can comfortably cover these expenses by working a cash job at a cafe or a gas station. Working the legal maximum of 20 hours a week yields roughly 60 to 80,000 rupees a month. It barely makes a dent. In major student hubs experiencing 40% inflation, that part-time wage is entirely consumed by basic rent and groceries. Students frequently find themselves calling home to India for emergency transfers just to keep the lights on. Then comes the terrifying post-study work cliff. This is the dangerous ticking clock where graduates must secure a high-paying corporate job that sponsors their visa before their temporary stay expires. If that clock runs out before you find a sponsor, you are forced to return to India, carrying a Western-sized debt on a local salary. What was heavily marketed as a fast 3-year path to prosperity is now a 5-year debt trap. It is a grueling, high-pressure environment that has led 68% of isolated Indian students to report severe mental health struggles, with 1 in 3 dropping out entirely within their first year. For students who are absolutely determined to leave, the mathematical realities of North America and Australia are forcing a pivot toward emerging hubs like Germany and Ireland. This comparison matrix ranks the top destinations. Look closely at Germany. Because public universities charge virtually zero tuition, your total 2-year cost drops to roughly 5 to 10 lakh rupees. Crucially, it still maintains a strong 75% job placement rate for graduates. Because the initial debt is so low, graduates in European hubs can break even in just 2.5 to 3 years. That is a massive advantage over the deeply red 4 to 5 year recovery zones of the US and Canada. But that fast return on investment comes with a steep, non-negotiable trade-off. You cannot survive in the German corporate world with just English. You have to achieve fluency in a complex new language and navigate a rigid cultural assimilation process that many find deeply isolating. Europe offers higher permanent residency odds, but it demands a total commitment to cultural and linguistic integration. This path is built for specialists willing to do the work, rather than those simply seeking a familiar environment overseas. There is a third option, a zero-debt counterplay that completely bypasses the global visa lottery, the 2026 Indian domestic boom. The domestic market is currently experiencing massive hiring momentum. Recent data shows a 73% hiring intent for freshers within the Indian IT sector. Domestic giants are acting as massive absorption engines. Companies are hiring tens of thousands of freshers directly out of Tier 2 and Tier 3 colleges, pulling them in through free training programs and national qualifier tests. The National Qualifier Test is a standardized exam used by major Indian tech firms to evaluate the skills of mass applicants. At the same time, the ceiling in India has shattered. If you build a strong portfolio in high-growth sectors like artificial intelligence or machine learning, starting salaries for freshers are now hitting between 25 and 50 lakh rupees. When you compare the wealth accumulation timelines, the math is striking. Earning 10 to 18 lakh rupees immediately in your home country with absolutely zero debt vastly outpaces spending 3 to 5 desperate years overseas just trying to get your bank account back to zero. Building a career in India is a calculated move to capture domestic growth while bypassing the high-interest debt and visa lotteries that define the modern abroad gamble. The final verdict on whether to stay or go in 2026 comes down to a harsh, objective truth. Your decision must be dictated strictly by your baseline academic and financial profile, not by your ambition. Let's start with the elite profile. This is the top 10% of academic performers with an 8.5 CGPA or higher, or students with over 1 crore rupees in family backing who can pay out of pocket. A CGPA, or cumulative grade point average, is a metric used to measure a student's overall academic performance. If you fall into this top 15%, studying in the US or Germany remains a highly rational, mathematically sound bet. You have the leverage to access elite global networks and secure high-ceiling opportunities without being crushed by loan interest. But then there is the middle-class aspirant. This group makes up 85% of the applicant pool, graduates from Tier 2 and Tier 3 colleges who would rely entirely on securing a 60 to 80 lakh rupee education loan. If this is your profile, you need to stay in India. The underlying math of the global economy is definitively against you, and the reality of that debt will break you. Instead of gambling your family's savings on a visa lottery, take your limited funds and redirect them into high-intensity domestic upskilling boot camps. That is the fastest way to capture a slice of that 73% domestic hiring boom. This flowchart maps the 2026 hybrid strategy. Trace this path. Build elite skills domestically to land remote Western roles. Earn global salaries while living in India. Build a financial buffer. Then relocate on a sponsored visa, absolutely debt-free. At the end of the day, real wealth in 2026 is built on data-driven strategy and domestic leverage. You have to make your move based on exact numbers and hard realities, not by chasing outdated expectations or heavily edited migration reels on Instagram.